Some people become educators because it's a job. Others become educators because they've lived what it feels like to need one good teacher, and they spend the rest of their life becoming that person for someone else. Welcome to the Marquis Masters Podcast. I'm Nick Frank. Today, I'm joined by Laurel Morton, a retired educator who spent 35 years in education, teaching 4th and 5th grade across the Ontario School District and the Arcadia Unified School District. In our conversation, Laurel takes us back to where it all started, playing teacher in the basement as a kid in Cincinnati, and how an early struggle with reading shaped the kind of teacher she became. We talk about the mentors who gave her confidence, what separates a good teacher from a truly impactful one, and the moments that stick with students long after the classroom. Let's get to it. Laurel, thank you so much for joining the Marquis Masters Podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a wonderful gift. So, yes.
Okay, you are a retired educator. You spent 35 years within the educational field. You did elementary school, 4th and 5th grade. Well, let's just kind of dive into what got you into teaching in the first place. Where did that bug come from?
Well, I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and living through those long winters, we were in the house all the time, and so we had a wonderful basement. And my poor siblings, I have 2 brothers, Jeff and Bill, and then a sister, Julie. My sister is 8 years younger, so she wasn't really involved so much. But I would play, teacher in the basement, and my poor brothers, would just roll their eyes like, oh my gosh. So I wanted to be a teacher, I think, from a really young age, and so that was sort of the course that. But my life took lots of turns, and it didn't happen until 1986. But teaching is really my heart, and it always has been. Yeah.
So it started at that young age, and then you decided when you got into education that, not high school, not the young kids, right in the middle, that 4th, 5th grade. What was it about that age range that really stuck out to you?
Well, I liked the students. Well, kind of going back, what happened in my life was when I was a first grader, I had to walk a mile to school and a mile home every day. Snow, rain, not uphill both ways, which is kind of laughable, but I had to do that. And so in my first grade class, there were 52 of us. And I had mentioned that one of my friends is a former superintendent and had 52 in her kindergarten class. So that number sort of really stuck in my head. But the teacher ended up having a nervous breakdown. And it was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know how she handled, 52 and all. So my mother was an English major, my dad brilliant, both very well educated, and I didn't learn to read as a first grader. That's when you really learned to read back then, and it set me on a path for a long time because it was like, as I said, I'm the oldest of the generations. They didn't know what to do. Where I went to school, they didn't have the help that was necessary, and so it set me on a path for a long time. Thankfully, 2nd grade, I had a teacher who knew phonics. I'm very auditory. And so, that really kind of helped me, but it still set me on a path for a long time. And so I think because of that and just knowing what I had gone through and the teachers who had come and had helped me, those kinds of things later on, and that, I've become a successful person, I wanted to be able to do that for children too, to help them define their best selves and to be, what they're supposed to be in their lives. So. Yeah.
What stuck out to me was the walking 1 mile both ways, because very similarly, I grew up in the Midwest, North Dakota more specifically. And so I also had to do that. I think I was about 3/4 of a mile from my school. But when I got old enough, I would walk home every day. And same thing, like through the snow pants. And then, you walk with a couple of your friends. And then my kids currently aren't quite there yet, but I don't think they're going to believe me about the stories of having to walk through the snow both ways.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
To school.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know one day, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. Go for it.
No, I was just going to say one day, we would listen on the radio for the weather report and whether the schools would be closed or not. I don't know if you did that, but one day they were really late in coming. And so I walked to school and I was the only one there. I had walked all that way and all that way home. And it was just like, oh my gosh. So yeah, having to do that was quite an ordeal. So, yeah.
I remember when I was growing up, it was the crawling on the local news. You turned on the news in the morning and waited to see if your school kind of popped up. And now my oldest daughter is in preschool, so now we just get an update on an app. Right now the app's just like, oh, there's school today or there's not school today. Like it's just so much different than what that was.
Yeah. That's
You
good you
mentioned
understand. Yeah. Yeah.
you mentioned in second grade there was a teacher that really sparked for
Yeah.
you. Like that was kind of they found something. Do you think is there a line that you can see of like looking back that this was maybe the person that propelled you to become a teacher in the first place?
I think so, because then after that, the next year I would stop by after school and help the teachers put up bulletin boards and grade papers. I mean, as a 7 or 8 year old, I don't know how they let me do that, but they did. So I think that really did, and it gave me confidence in myself that that I can do this. It was interesting on my report card for through so much of my elementary years. It said talks too much, and I thought, oh my gosh, and but I've thought about that a lot, and I thought maybe it's because I am very auditory, and that's how I process things, and that really helped me as a teacher to have the students have conversations with each other, and what is it that you're thinking? How can we solve this problem? That kind of a thing. And so I think that teacher, because she let me know that okay, there isn't anything terribly wrong with me. I just I need extra help now, and she gave me that confidence. So.
I think you and I would have been the troublemakers together growing up because my report card said the same exact thing about talking too much, which is probably why now I do podcasts and talk to people every day. I think they would have put us on the opposite sides of the classroom for talking too much.
That's hysterical. Oh my goodness.
When you think about, that you have this memory of this second grade teacher and how great that she was to get you, and then you went on to work for 35 years as an educator. When you think of teachers you worked with your style, with the ones that were just really impressionable, what did you notice was kind of the difference between like a good teacher and one who made like an amazingly impactful teacher?
Well, what's interesting is I taught for 35 years, for 14 in the Ontario Montclair School District, and then for my last 21 in the Arcadia School District. And they have a really cool thing at the end of the school year. It's called the Grad Run. And what they let the students do who are graduating, they get to go back to their elementary and middle schools and see their former teachers. And even though I'm retired now, I'm still invited back. I figure 4 more years, the kids won't know me anymore unless I had their siblings. But I set up a little table outside and little goodie bags and that kind of thing. And they come up to me and they say, because I have class lists and all that kind of stuff, do you remember me? And I do. And it's just so wonderful to see what they're going to be doing. And, and they say, well, do you remember when you did this? And one of the things that I loved so much as a teacher at the end of the school year, well, Arcadia, was a remarkable school district. It was voted the #1 school district in the Los Angeles County area, in the top 1% in the nation. So a large Asian population, people who came, from Asia, different Asian countries, and a lot was expected. And so we were a phenomenal district. And so to be a part of that. So at the end of the school year, after they had learned all the things that they had learned and needed to take their state tests and those kinds of things, then there was extra time at the end of the school year. So one of the things that I did was my students had to teach a lesson, and it didn't have to be academic, but they taught a lesson. It could be on anything that they were interested. One year, one of the students, her dog was having issues with his eating, and so she wanted to find a really good dog food, and so her mom brought the dog, and she talked to the students, and asked them, what do your dogs eat, that kind of thing. So it's just really remarkable. Then they had to do a test, create a test after the lesson plan and all that kind of stuff. So really, really remarkable. And those were the things that they remembered, those times. One time a student brought a fish that had been in an aquarium at home, and I brought it in a bowl of water, and I guess it didn't have enough oxygen or something. And by recess time, it was starting to flag. Oh my gosh. Thankfully, one of my students had an aide, and there was a little pet shop close to where I taught, and they were able to revive it, which was great. And I said after that, no more live animals. I mean, you can videotape things. So that's what they started doing, at home, videotape things. A couple of girls were baking cookies, and then while the cookies were baking, they went out in the backyard and videotaped a commercial. And it was just so cool, just to see, see them and what they were interested in. And so at the grad run, when I talk to these students and find out what they're going to be doing, sometimes I knew what they were going to be doing because of what I knew them as a fourth grade teacher or fifth grade teacher. But sometimes, wonderful things happened to them and they were able to, find what they want to do. And that's really a very important thing. So I think that's what makes a difference. A lot of my students didn't speak the language or, limited language. And then in teaching in the Ontario Montclair School District, it was mostly people from South America, Latin America, so, parents not well educated often. And, but to help them to just be encouraged and to say, what is it that you're interested in and how can I help you to do that? So I think that's what the difference is not seeing it as a burden to be a teacher, but, just to be an encourager and they give so much to you too. So, yeah.
Have you ever wondered how some people's stories live on, not just through their work, but through history itself? For nearly 130 years, Marquis Who's Who has been documenting the lives of leaders, innovators, and changemakers across every profession. From CEOs and scientists to artists and educators, Marquis has captured the stories behind success, the people who define our times. Being listed in Marquis Who's Who isn't just recognition, it's taking control of your personal brand and using it to create a meaningful and impactful legacy. It's a record of your life's work, preserved, published, and accessible to generations who will study, research, and be inspired by your contribution. If you've built something meaningful and you've made an impact in your field or community, this is how you ensure your story is told and your personal brand is maintained accurately with integrity. Visit marquiswho'swho.com to learn more about how you or someone you admire can be featured, because history remembers those who take the time to record it.
And now when you see these individuals that you knew when they were, a lot younger, like cross the stage and they graduate or they come up to you and they give you a hug, how do you feel? Like, what is that feeling for you like to see that?
Just that they've found their niche, where they're supposed to be. It's interesting having a conversation. Well, my brothers are both electrical engineers. My sister was in medical school for a period of time, wanted to be a medical missionary and ended up getting really sick and decided this maybe isn't what I want to do. And so she is now a marriage and family therapist, which is quite an amazing thing. But my brother Bill, when we moved out here to California, lived in Newport Beach area. He was a water polo player, a lifeguard at the beach, surfer, deep sea diver, that kind of thing. And he always wanted to be a marine biologist. He told me this recently. It's like, I've known him my whole life. And it just breaks my heart just to think, that, my dad kind of directed him into electrical engineering because, you can get a good job and support your, that kind of thing, which I understand. My dad, electrical engineer, that was sort of the thing. But to think that, that was what he really wanted to do. Well, he and his family have now moved to St. Augustine, Florida, and he's retired. So, able to be back on the beach, and because they had lived in Texas for a period of time, Plano, Texas, when he was working, and to have that again and to be able to do things that, that he loves so much. And so I think for students, helping them, to find what it is that they love so much. I used to love to go through Starbucks and places like that. And I would always talk to the young people, tell them I was a teacher, then retired. And what is it that you're doing? Are you in school? And what are you doing? And they would tell me sometimes. And then one year, one girl said, There was no teacher that ever meant anything to her. She was in college, and it just broke my heart thinking, oh, wow. And I said, it's not too late. Hopefully there will be somebody, in your college years who will help you to, just to direct and guide you in any way that you need. So, yeah.
When you think about the hugs, the gratitude, the recognition, when you think back on your career, what are some things that you look back and you're like, here's what I'm hanging my ruler on. Here's what I'm hanging my hat on, in terms of accomplishments.
Well, I think some good things that happened to me. One, in our district, we had something called Profiles in Excellence. It used to be per school. Now it is per whole district. Okay, so but I was chosen in 2003, 2004, that school year, for Profiles in Excellence, and I'd only been in the district for 3 years. And it was my colleagues are the ones who recommended me. And I was at a meeting and they mentioned that, and I almost fell off the chair thinking, oh my gosh, that my colleague saw something in that, which was really wonderful. And then in 2004, there were 35 teachers chosen out of the whole Los Angeles County area to go back to Williamsburg, Virginia. There was a couple, Marion and Robert Wilson from UCLA, who thought that California teachers didn't have enough experience with American history, and being back on historical areas and stuff. So they set up a grant fund for teachers to be able to go. So my friend Sandy, who she went at UCLA, so that was nice. We were chosen to go back to Williamsburg, and we got to go to Jamestown and, all that kind of thing. And the only thing we had to do when we came back was share what we had learned at the Reagan Library, which was a pretty cool thing. We had each teacher who, had their own little sessions and that kind of thing. And then they liked us so much that they asked us to come back the next year, my friend Sandy and me, to lead a group of 35 teachers around Williamsburg and, Jamestown, and to talk about that part of history. My dad loved history, brilliant mind. We would go on family trips to Williamsburg. We went to Gettysburg, places like that, and he knew more than the docents did. So it was kind of a fun thing to do. But so being chosen to do that was really remarkable. And then in 2013, the Rotary Club initiated me, for Teacher of the Month. Well, there are 10 schools in my district, so one for every month. And that, they were honoring me and acknowledging me for what I had given to the community of educators. So it wasn't just my school and my district, but, it was outside of that also. So, yeah.
You even touched on a little bit of, like some of the challenges that teachers face with, big classrooms and things like that. So if you could, thinking about teachers of today and some of the challenges that they go through, and especially the young teachers where there's a lot of stress, potentially a lack of resources. So like, what kind of advice would you give to young teachers who are maybe, struggling at this point to just maybe not keep going on, but just to, hey, it's going to get better. It's going to push through. Like, what's some advice for some young teachers?
Yeah, I think just having a mentor, somebody that you can really talk to honestly about, I think that's important. I got my teaching credential. I graduated from college in 1978, and then I got my teaching credential in 1985, and then I got my master's in 1992. And so, there was quite a distance in that. But one of the professors, when I was getting my credential, Dr. Gary Garfield, just a remarkable person, and again, saw something in me and recommended me for Who's Who of the West, which was amazing. And then also, what's it called? Phi Kappa Phi, an honorary society, those kinds of things. And that, I had something to give. And what was interesting is his wife ended up being the principal at my school when I first went to Arcadia. He didn't know. He thought I was living someplace else. And his wife didn't know until much later. But he was really marvelous in that I could go and really talk to him about things. I did my master's thesis on the miseducation of children and what we expect of them sometimes. And it's what's interesting is I have a 7-year-old grandnephew that I pick up now on Wednesdays from school, and then we go get a little bite to eat, and then I take him home and doing homework with him. Oh my gosh. I had a parent many years ago who's came and went. I always loved parent-teacher conferences because I heard great things. And he said that, could you help me, Miss Morton, with my first grader? He was an economist, so definitely a mathematician. I can't help my first grade child. I was teaching his fourth grade daughter, but with math. And it was like, I was kind of giggling to myself, not, to him, but now helping my 7-year-old grandnephew Zayden is like the things they want them to, all we want them to do is add and subtract, but they have to decompose things and it's like, oh my gosh. So I always go and I read what the teacher, the directions, and, thankfully there are worksheets and those kinds of things so that I'm not teaching against what the way his teacher teaches, but it's what they expect of kids today. And like I said, I did my master's thesis on that, kindergartner. Well, you have a preschooler, but being able to write sentences or paragraphs in kindergarten is like, that's a whole other issue, but that's a lot to ask. But, I don't know. Maybe education is different now in the sense I retired in 2021, so it wasn't that long ago, but still, yeah, what's expected. I think just having the socialization, maybe your child in preschool, having those socialization moments, I think is so important and all, and having parents who are there and for them and can talk to them and guide them and let them know, okay, maybe you learn in a different way, kids who are dyslexic or kids who are on the spectrum. I mean, all different ways that we can each learn. And what's interesting is when you go back and you find, famous people who have had a learning disability in some form and what they've done with their lives, that it just gives you hope that everybody can find their way in whatever way that is. So, yeah.
How have you found is just the basic, a really simple thing of just reading? How important is it to just read to your kids?
Well, what's interesting is that's a part of what I have to do. I have to sign his reading log, that we've done that and that whole thing. And it used to be like when I was teaching that, of course there would be their textbooks that they would read from, but helping them to find things that they were interested in. And so if you can do that, then they want to find out more and they want to find out more. Now, Zayden is so brilliant in the sense that he used to love dinosaurs. I mean, he knew the technical names. It was like, how do you know that or whatever? And now he's kind of moved away from that. But, school can be kind of boring for him sometimes because he's so used to this grandiose stuff. And then, having to do just the basic, we did a spelling test yesterday, with the words. And it's just like, oh, my gosh, he wants it to be, he has a switch when he comes home. He gets to be on, that for a little bit and, all the animated stuff. But he wants it to be fun and exciting. So if you can give them, your children and all children, let them know about all the books that are out there and they can find things that they're interested in. Maybe they didn't even know they were interested in. I think that's a great way. And then just spending that time with your children. And if you love books, what is it that you can give to them?
My 5-year-old is in the dinosaur phase as well. We're also in the negotiating phase for bedtime stories.
Oh, okay.
Going up and up each night. She's such an avid reader. She's very much in the dinosaur phase. So it's she's the same way. She's saying dinosaurs and she can spot them out and
I can tell.
Like exactly what it is.
I know.
And it's incredible. You kind of touched a little bit on what you're doing now, but how do you spend your free time, nowadays?
Well, it's interesting. I'm part of the Assistance League of Arcadia, and so we run a thrift shop. And all of the money from that thrift, we're all volunteers, all goes to something called Operation School Bell. And so the money then goes to buy books, backpacks, shoes, clothing for students in lower socioeconomic areas. So that's really, a big part of my heart. Also, I'm now the president of the guild at my church. So, very involved in that. Being in a leadership role is a whole different thing because as a teacher, I'd go in kind of full up in my classroom and, I'd go to meetings and I would meet with my team. But, it was pretty much me now having to listen to all sides and make sure everybody's heard and people are used to having things done a certain way. And it's like, oh, my gosh. So, but it's wonderful in lots of ways. And then we started this thing called the Emmaus Ministry of a person in our church said that if she ever, or when she did pass, she didn't want to have a service because nobody would come. And it was like, what do you mean nobody would come? And she is, homebound, has no family. So we kind of changed that. And now I'm a part of the group. I do that. I'll write letters or call or whatever. I'm not able to go and, just time-wise to go and because I live farther away from where my church is. I moved away from that area. But anyway, just to let them know they're not alone. So I do that. I'm part of that. I have a friend who's now being fed by a stomach tube and will be now for the rest of her life. It was interesting. She taught my niece when she was a second grader, unbeknownst to me. And then her daughter, when she came to teach at my school, her daughter Jan is a dear friend, and then Jan's dad and Barbara's husband used to work for Focus on the Family. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, Dr. James Dobson. My mom worked for them, and so it was interesting, the connection there. So I go over once a week and just spend time, just because she's home alone, most of the time, and just to encourage her that she's not alone. And then I have another friend who now has metastasized breast cancer that's gone into her lungs and bones and stuff. So I go and take her grocery shopping, take her trash cans out, bring them in. She's got a great community of people, but that's really my heart, to make people not, I don't want people to feel alone. And, I've got so many family members, all over the country. I do have a sister and family who are there, but my friend who has the cancer, her parents immigrated from Europe before she was born. And so she has no family here. She has some aunts and uncles in Germany, but, nobody here. So that's really what, I do. So, through the ministry of being the guild president, and then the, assistance league, and then helping friends, and then helping my Zayden, being the teacher for once a week and that kind of stuff. Those are the things that really are my heart and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So how important is being involved in the community to you? Because clearly, you're very involved. And so how important is that to give back to the community?
Well, I see, I have, like I said, 6 nieces and nephews, and, between 25 and 35, and they are so incredibly busy that, they don't have children. Well, 2 of them do have children, single parents, but, that kind of thing. But they're so busy working and raising their kids and all that kind of stuff that I don't know when they sleep. The whole world is just so crazily busy all the time. And so I'm grateful that I can give something back and, and help in ways. Just I have time and I can make time. And so often people can't do that. So I'm grateful now that and one thing, I can do, that's one thing people said, well, is being retired boring? And I said, for me, not at all. I'm busier now than I ever was, but I get to choose the things now that I want to do. So I think that's helpful too, because I go with a different heart when I do that. Yeah.
Well, I love that. It sounds like you're obviously staying incredibly busy, still kind of bringing that educational vibe to a lot of the things that you still do. Okay. So before we wrap up, I've got a couple lightning questions for you. Just a couple things.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
We're going to zoom out of education and zoom a little bit more into you and dive in a little bit. So,
okay.
If you could meet a person, have lunch with them, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Okay. Well, going back kind of to my family history, I haven't really talked about that. One of my relatives, John Morton, signed the Declaration of Independence. And so he knew Ben Franklin, and he came from Finland, and he was very much of a loyalist. So on the way, he was going to sign as a loyalist going to Philadelphia, and he changed his mind on the way, thinking, why should I give my allegiance to a king who couldn't care less? And he changed his mind and voted as a patriot. And he was one of the deciding votes for that we became a nation. And when he got home, there was such furor that he was the youngest of the signers to die. They think maybe a heart attack, maybe something else, tuberculosis. But thankfully, there were indigenous people who took his family in a good way and took care of them until things kind of, blew over. That was kind of an important thing. And then on my mom's side, there's a person, Dicey Langston, who was 15 years old, lived in South Carolina. I wish I had known this when I lived in South Carolina, because we moved to Charleston, South Carolina. I went to high school and 2 years of college there. But she swam across a river at night to save her. But she found out information that she wasn't supposed to find out, and swam across a river at night, almost drowned, to save her brother's camp. And she did. And then she swam all the way back, and the Tories, I guess the Scottish people were fighting at that point, found out about it and were going to her house to kill all of her male relatives. And her dad was an invalid, and she stood between him and the Duns, and they decided not to kill her because they didn't want to kill a 15-year-old girl. And so she was a remarkable person. They have a museum for her that I'd like to go to in South Carolina. I Zoom once a month with my Charleston sorority sisters and all that I know, and 2 of them I went to high school with. So I think if I could meet anyone, it would be Dicey Langston. She got married at 16, had 22 kids. I can't even imagine that. 17 of them survived. I think, for a farm and keeping that whole thing going. But such a brave person. And so I would want to ask her, because in my life, I think I've moved 18 times. A lot of that as a child, as my dad moved up the corporate ladder. We had to move to different areas and having to prove myself over and over again, that kind of a thing. And so her bravery. And so I'm trying to be a more brave person and doing that. So I think Dicey Langston would be the person that I would want to meet and talk to. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
We lasted almost 30 minutes in here to find out that you had a relative that also signed the Declaration of Independence. So
yeah.
If you could ever wind back the clock and start your professional career over again, do you think you would do the same thing? Do you think you would was there ever a path that you were like, maybe this is something I should have done, or was it always like teacher or nothing?
No, it wasn't always teacher. Well, I think it was, but sadly, I got married and got divorced, and so that kind of set me on a path too, because I worked in the financial world, for from 1978 to 1983, that kind of thing, and and all when I lived in Santa Barbara, California, and in an Irvine area, and all. So I saw what that was like, and so I was making a good living, but it really wasn't me. And so when I moved to Sierra Madre, where I lived, when I started my teaching profession, when I went back to school and all, I was grateful that I had the opportunity to do that and to do really, really what I wanted to do. And like I said, that's what made me think about my brother Bill, with his wanting to be a marine biologist. My brother Jeff, he loved being an electrical engineer. When he was a kid, he'd get toys for different holidays and stuff. He'd take them apart and make things. He's got like a 3D printer, all this stuff in his garage now. He just loves all that stuff. So that was great for him. But yeah, I'm grateful that I know the financial world is great. I have a lot of people in my life who have helped me, by my town, all those kinds of things, but it's not me. And so I'm grateful that, that I was able to do it when I did it, because I had seen what the other was. And so I was all in when I was able to go back to school. So,
yeah. Sometimes that grass isn't always greener, or it is greener, right?
Right.
You know what it is.
That's right. That's
right. And then like looking back from personal life, from professional life, like, what do you think is one of the most important lessons that you learned just about, life?
That I think maybe because of my faith and all, that all things work together for good. You just kind of have to hang in there, and find the best. One thing I appreciate too is my nieces and nephews. I'm very involved with them. We love each other very much, and they'll call me or ask for advice on things. And, not that I would ever tell them what to do, but from my own perspective, what I can give. And I think, they know I love them and I'm giving, they don't have to take my advice if they don't want to, but I appreciate that so much and I think we all need that in our lives, people that we can talk to and just share, what we're going through, because when we do, then that's the best part of ourselves. It's not fake. And, and I think we need, when I look at you and, and when I look at other people, you've shared a little bit about your life, but I don't really know, exactly what you're going through and all. And you look at people sometimes and you think they have their, I'm sure you do, but some people they have their acts together, but maybe they don't. And, what is it that they're, really going through and all, and how to have people in your life that you can trust and go to when you need those things. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, sometimes we live kind of in a social media world too, where everything looks like everything's like amazing.
Yeah.
No one typically shares on social media the negative sides of life, right? It's,
That's
hey, we're at the beach, we're on vacation, we're this, we're this, we're
That's
this.
right.
And then you find out just by having conversations with people that, there's a lot more going on.
Yeah. And I think my mom, ended up having a brain aneurysm. And that was really hard. And she survived because she had collapsed at work. They had been able to get her to the hospital quickly. She had surgery. They put a clamp on her aneurysm. And so she was one of the 5% of the people who survived. And then 13 years later, she was having similar symptoms. And my dad took her back to the doctor, and they found out that the clamp had come off of her aneurysm and that it had continued to grow. And so for those 13 years, so after that point, then the doctors were remarkable, but she did have dementia, after that, and was never herself again. But what it did, my dad was in the Korean War and was on the front lines, things that we never knew, PTSD, I'm sure, and those kinds of things. But seeing how faithful these doctors were who were brought into the family, it was like, oh my gosh, he came back to faith in a sense and believed that, life was good and so, it brought our family really close together. But each day is such a gift and, being our best selves that we can be every day. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Lori, it was so great to meet with you today.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Yes.
And one final thing is what does being a Marquis Listey, what does that mean to you?
Oh my gosh. Talking about the things before, my honors, I mean, it's remarkable in doing that. And like I said, 1798, I know you guys have been in existence. I have a couple of books here. One was the copyright is 1898. It's called Sleeping Stories of Literature, How Different the World Is, and here's another one, fourth grade, McGuffey's, fourth grade reader. And this was from copyrighted 1879. So how much, our world has changed in so many ways that way. But to be a part of that legacy, I think that's what Marquis Who's Who does for me. It's just because you guys have been in existence for so long and, with my family heritage and all, but, hopefully I would always tell my students, you're standing on the shoulders of those who came before you. And I'm standing on, my aunt this morning sent me this really cool thing because she sort of, on my mom's side of the family, all of these people who have been in my family, our family lineage on my mom's side, things that I didn't know. And so just to do that, and I think, they're writing this autobiography about me and my life, that I can pass that on because there are a lot of things we moved. And my dad apologized before he died that he had to take us away from family because, my grandparents, my cousins I went to school with, and then we moved from Ohio to South Carolina. Not social media like we have today, so you'd call or write. It just never was the same. And so now when I get invited by family members to weddings of my cousins' kids and their grandkids, they don't know me. They don't know us. And one of my cousin's sons came out to California to go to college. He's now an ER doctor, and he had never been to California. We kind of took him in, and would invite him to different things, and he got to know us. And so that's really important to me, is that my family members extended know who we are and from where they came, and that we're all standing on the shoulders of those who came before. So.
Lori, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you sharing your journey as an educator and the stories that carried you through your family for the generations.
Well, thank you. You're precious. And just knowing the teachers in your family, that just put me at rest. So thank you. You're wonderful. And please say hello to Charlie for me too. Thank you so much.
Well, hey, if this conversation resonated with you, consider sharing the episode with someone who values history, education, and stories that quietly shape who we are. And if you'd like to hear more conversations from people whose work and lives reflect leadership, courage, lasting impact, visit themarquiswho'swho.com and subscribe to the Marquis Masters Podcast wherever you are listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, leave a review, share your favorite teacher or educator, someone who made an inspirational change upon your life so we can keep sharing these stories. I'm Nick Frank, and we'll catch you for the next Marquis Masters Podcast.